Hi, this is Trust Danielle with Call to Learn. And today, Hannah Stoddard is going to be able to tell us about the Joseph Smith Foundation that she and her family put together. And they have come up with 11 principles that help all learning and teaching, and especially with us homeschoolers. So Hannah, thank you for coming.
I'm so glad to be here. This is a very fun idea. So thank you for putting this together.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So will you share with us some of those? I know you're going to go deep into two of those principles. So which principles?
Yeah, so a couple years ago, well, actually quite a few years ago, it really starts, I was homeschooled. I'm the oldest of 10.
Okay.
And so this journey really starts with what my parents went through through our homeschooling journey. And then learning, like you mentioned, we operate the Joseph Smith Foundation. And the focus of that organization is really to stay true to the Restoration, defend Joseph Smith, study Joseph Smith's teachings, and really learn about all different subjects, all different areas of life and thought through the lens of the Restoration. And so education is a very important part of that.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know that Joseph Smith was an incredible educator. He set up a lot of different kinds of schools. Brigham Young, of course, the next president of the church, same vision, very passionate about education. And so what we've done for almost my father for 20 years, and then as soon as I jumped on the team, then myself, studying all of Joseph Smith's writings and studying that vision that they had for what a Zion education looks like, and trying to embody it into something that's digestible. So someone doesn't have to spend years studying every journal and everything. And what we consolidated it down to was 11 principles. And so those principles are available on the Joseph Smith Foundation website with some other resources that are available that are free.
Okay.
But I thought today that I'd talk about two of the basic ones, and then you can springboard into the others.
Okay, awesome.
So just a little bit about just who I am. I'm, like I mentioned, I'm the oldest of 10, and I direct most of the Joseph Smith Foundation projects. We operate about 10 to 11 different websites and as part of the foundation, one of which is Joseph Smith Academy, specifically for education, and also do documentaries. Our family has done 8 to 9 different documentaries, and I have been the producer for most of those.
And they're wonderful. I just have to put that in.
Wonderful. I'm glad you like them.
I know. I've really, really enjoyed them.
Oh, good.
The amount of research that you guys put into them is incredible. Yeah.
And a lot of people ask, how can you do that when, I'm 23 and I'm the oldest of 10. And so people ask, how can you do videos and run a business and at the same time homeschool all these kids? And the answer is because they're one and the same. We do these projects for our education. So that's kind of a perfect lead-in to my first principle of a Joseph Smith education is focus out and not in. And to say it bluntly, kind of this principle is about your life is not about you. And how that applies into the education is, the world, how they think of education and how they operate with education and really any area of life is that it's all about fun. What can we do for fun? How can we make this fun?
Yeah.
It's all about us. And really at the end of the day, as long as our life is about us and our own strength, then, as it says in the Book of Mormon, if you rely on the arm of flesh, that doesn't turn out too well. And then a road you don't want to go down on.
Yeah.
And there was a book called The Deliberate Truth. The Deliberate Church, excuse me, by a man named Mark Dever, and he made a statement that I want to read because I think it's very fascinating.
Okay.
He was talking about individuals, but if you think of this as a parent, he said, what you win them with is what you'll win them to. And he said, if you win, so I'm going to insert your children, if you win them with the gospel, you'll win them to the gospel. But then he says, if you win them with programs, techniques, charisma, he was like, you'll win, you might not win them, you might win them to, but you're going to win them to your techniques and your programs and your charisma. And so that is one of the principles that Joseph Smith was very emphatic on in education is we need, all of our education should not be on focusing on ourselves, what are our goals and our dreams, and it needs to be focusing on serving others. When you think about Jesus Christ, that was really his example when he came to earth. He spent his entire life serving others. And I love, when I was young, my dad was substituting for a Sunday school class, and I went in with him. I think I was 14. No, I was probably about 12. 12 or 13, and he asked the question, who is the happiest person alive? And all the kids, of course, were like, God is. And my dad said, wait, before you answer, he said, I want you to ask yourself, what do you really believe? Do you believe God is the happiest person? And I've thought a lot about that myself. I still ask myself that question all the time today. Do I really believe that God is the happiest person? Because if I believe he's happy, and I want to be happy, and I think everybody listening to this today wants to be happy. No one's like, I want to be miserable. Everyone wants to be happy. We have to say, okay, well then how does God live his life? And God's life is not about food. It's not about fun. It's not about fantasy and following after those things. It's about serving others. He spends his whole life. That's his work and his glory. Yeah. And that brings joy. And so what we would do a lot growing up to kind of help my parents give us this vision for education, focusing out and not in, is we would watch movies. And my dad loved to use movies because you always remember it. And one movie that we would watch was a movie on Mother Teresa. And if you know a little bit about her story, she was a nun in the Catholic Church, and she was in India. And she began being exposed to all of the suffering and all of the people that were destitute and dying in the streets around her. And so she decided to leave the convent, leave the security and the beauty of being this teacher in this place, well fed, well, the best of everything. And she went into the slums and gave the rest of her life to serving the poor. And my parents we'd watch this as a family, and they would pause it and they would say, there's suffering just like this going on all over the world today. It's not just in Mother Teresa's time or just in so-and-so's day and age, or, you know, there were lepers when Jesus Christ was alive and people were suffering then, but today everything's wonderful, you know. It was definitely wonderful in our home. We were never hungry. We were never, but realizing there were people around the world that were starving, and they would say, people are suffering physically, and then there are millions more that are suffering spiritually. They're dying on the inside. They might look happy and successful on the outside, and they might not, but they're dying spiritually on the inside. And they would say, you have got to do something with your life to help other people. They would say, this life is not about you. So if you're deciding, and I love to read. And so there was often many times when my dad would come up to me and I'd be reading a book on the Reformation even, or Martin Luther. So this is not, you know, a bad book or anything. And my dad would ask, what are you going to do with that book? How is that book going to help you serve someone? And if I couldn't answer that question adequately, he'd be like, I suggest maybe you go pick up a subject or go work on something where you can actually go out and be helping someone, or something you can use to serve, which really got me thinking of, you know, just it's kind of higher and lower laws. You know, if you have to choose between reading horrible literature, you know, or a better book, that's great. But even raising it a step higher. And that really got me thinking about serving. There was another time where really stuck in my memory. I can still remember exactly where I was sitting in the room, and it was late at night, and my dad's always suffered with some severe health challenges since I can remember, nearly died. And so he was resting, as he often did, would come home from work and basically just collapse on the floor. He's laying there, and I came up and I was like, what do you want to do tonight, Dad? Do you just want to watch a movie, or what do you want to do? And he just looked at me and he was like, we never asked that question. It was very kind, and it was a very, like, you know, he was wanting to teach me something. He said, we don't ask ourselves that question. What do I want to do? We ask, what does the Lord want me to do right now? And with that, my dad would help us learn, that doesn't mean the Lord wants us to be miserable, and he's always going to be like, how can I make this person miserable? You know? The Lord will sometimes say, go get some recreation. We'd go play basketball together as a family. My dad used to coach basketball, so we'd go do basketball or go do wiffle ball at the park. Or sometimes we would go and work, or sometimes we would go serve a family that was struggling in our ward. Or sometimes we were working hard, studying the scriptures, or cleaning, or organizing, and sometimes we were watching a movie. You know, we were always asking, is this the best thing we can do with our time? And is this something that's going to help other people?
Awesome.
And
great questions.
And so I think with that, also asking, people will say, oh, well, there's this world out there that's so alluring, right? And it's so fun. So what I've got to do is I've got to compete with that. I've got to make my home more fun and more crazy and more of a party than the world is, so they want to stay here. So that goes back to what you win them with is what you win them to. And the thing is, the world is always going to be more fun It's always going to be more cool, more hip, more in, more satisfying to your appetites than anything you can compete with. So what is the answer to, you know, not succumbing to your appetite, not succumbing to the world? And the answer is Jesus Christ. And so using the gospel to motivate, and the best way to do that is not to focus on yourself, it's to serve other people, and in that process we become converted. And I think any mother who's done working, she knows she becomes converted as she's giving her life to serve her children. And that's something your children can learn from 6, 7, 8, 9. They don't have to wait till they're 20 to learn that. It's probably better that way. Saves them some misery. But so that was something that, so now tying this back to education, that's a principle just in life, but into education. So we'd be thinking if my parents were thinking, okay, writing and language arts, want our kids to learn how to write, learn how to speak, communicate with others. Why do we need to learn how to write and speak and communicate? Well, that's what you do, all right? I mean, you just got to be educated, and that's just what we do.
That's part of the education,
yeah,
right?
That's just part of what you have to do, because I don't know why, but some professor out there
said they have to do it.
Said that's what you do. That's what they do at government school. Or we ask, well, we need to be able to communicate the gospel. We need to be able to teach, and that doesn't mean just preach my gospel. You know, that means how do we teach people how to eat healthier? How do we teach them how to get through depression or anxiety? How do we teach them how to live just a happier life in every area? And if you don't know how to speak, if you don't know how to write, then you're going to have a very difficult time effectively being that instrument to communicate. And so that was a motivation. So for some of us that didn't like having to learn grammar and everything, we're like, okay, well, I have a reason for this. I can do this. Maybe it's not fun for myself, but I can do this to serve someone else. And they'd ask, what kind of articles need to be written? So we would sit down and we'd say, well, let's write articles on we did some on the family order, we did some on history, different issues that were going on at the time. Something would happen in the news, and we wanted to write about that in light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, show how the gospel of Jesus Christ answered those news events. And so we'd have to write something, and my parents would revise it a lot before it went online. But you know, once it did, and then when you started seeing it affecting people's lives, and people started sending emails, wow, this changed my life, or one article on music, and we've had several mothers say that saved some of their children from suicide, actually implementing better music. And it started with an article that we did for school. So, and that's what we did for our education. So, and I think another principle, there were days that it was fun, you know, and we're like, we're going to change the world, you know, and you're all on fire. And then there's those days you wake up and it's just not so fun, and you just want to crawl back in your bed, and you're like, I really don't want to do this today. Let's face it, we all have those moments, you know. It's not like Hollywood movies where it's, you know, the victory every 1 minute. There are those moments that are, and that was the moment where a lot of times my parents would use the quote from Lectures on Faith that would talk about a religion that doesn't require its people to sacrifice, that sacrifice is essential. Sacrifice brings forth the blessings of heaven. And I want to quote that one quote just because it's short, but in Lectures on Faith it says, "Let us here observe that a religion that does not require the sacrifice of all things never has power sufficient to produce the faith necessary unto life and salvation." So they would teach us through sacrifice, and before that paragraph before it says sacrifice everything, your house, your character. That doesn't mean you give up your character, but you're willing to put your name on the line for Jesus Christ. You're willing to stand up when it's not popular. You're willing to be that person to say, this movie is not appropriate, and everyone else is like, you are crazy, right? Being that person. And my dad often tells the story when he was young, 15 or 16, I believe, maybe incorrect on that, but mid-teens, Elder Hartman Rector came to visit up in Idaho, and later he became a family friend, but at that time he didn't know who we were from anywhere. Or I wasn't born yet, but he didn't know my dad. And so my dad's sitting there on the front row, and Elder Rector got up and he started talking about how everyone is worried about being too good. Everyone is so worried about if they're going to be too good, or can we be too righteous. And he was like, he said, you will never regret being too good. You will always look back at your life and want to have done better. But you will never look back at your life and go, you know what, I was just too nice in that situation. I just was too committed to God, you know, I should not have done all of that. And we laugh, but I think a lot of us all think, yeah, sometimes we can fall in, like, are we, you know? And so putting that into our education. And so what we would do for schools is we're studying history. My parents would use good role models. So I can remember watching God's Outlaw, the story of William Tyndale, which is an amazing movie.
Yes.
And another movie that was called Bless You Prison, about a lady that was put in a Romanian prison when communism came over and took over her country.
Cool.
I can remember watching that and thinking, they're happy. They're in a prison cell being tortured and they're happy. I think they're happier than I am in my life. Like, just because you could tell they had peace and they had confidence. Yeah, they weren't enjoying it. They certainly weren't feeling pleasurable. Yeah. But they were happy. They were joyful. They had the power of God in their life. You could tell it was coming through. And I remember thinking about that. I think I even bore my testimony about it the next Sunday, because it was just so impressing in my mind. Yeah. But so you can see my parents were using this as our education. And it not only were we learning the academic subjects, not only were we learning language arts and history and science and math and debating and all the gardening skills and everything, but we were also becoming converted in ourselves and learning, how am I going to make this count in real life? When I turn 18, 19, how am I going to be ready for the real world? Am I going to fall, or am I going to be able to withstand it confidently and be able to make a difference and be a light? Wow. And that was a very essential principle. And so sometimes people ask, well, what was like you saying, how are you going to be ready for real life? If you're focusing on serving your whole life, how are you going to be ready for real life? You know, legit question. So we often had a balance between intellectual and hands-on skills. So while we were studying history, maybe to write an article or be able to address a real life event or help someone, a lot of times a family would come over for help. And my parents would always have all of us kids lined up, sitting there listening. And they would say, listen, and so that we could see, you know, what's their issue and how are my parents using the gospel to help them? What questions are left unanswered? How would you answer those questions? So just in the real world, you know.
Incredible.
And so you had the intellectual side, but at the same time we had the hands-on, because my dad would be honest with us, and he would say, you girls need skills too. Because, you know, what if the country went to war? What if something like the Great Depression? I mean, that was 2007 when the big recession hit. And so and my parents didn't just brush it over and pretend. We knew what was going on. We knew about our family finances, and we listened as they were discussing, like, would we try construction, or should we try this, and what kinds of things will make money? But it wasn't to make money. It was because we knew God has a mission for our family, and we have to keep it going. So how are we going to keep the money going to be able to do it? And at the same time, those skills are all good. Learning electrical, learning construction, learning how to, when we built our own home when I was 13, my mom did most of the contracting work. So we had people come in and do the framing, but we did the tile. And we helped do some of the, you know, screwing on baseboards and painting. And so we were learning all these hands-on skills so that we were ready if we needed to go get a job, or we were ready to do web design. And my dad's thinking, what's the most efficient thing? How can we do good in the world and at the same time survive in the world financially? And being ready for that, not when we're 18, but when we're 10, 11, 12, 13, as soon as we were ready. As soon as we were ready. So that's one principle. And you know what, it's Joseph Smith's quote. I want to quote, this is another amazing quote. He said, "A man filled with the love of God is not content with blessing his family alone. But ranges through the whole world, anxious to bless the whole human race."
Wow.
And this is something I gained a testimony myself as I realized God was changing my heart, and as I became more committed to following his plan for my life, the more I felt this increasing desire that I wanted everyone to know. I wanted everyone to be able to feel the joy that I felt when I was forgiven of my sins, when I had my own Enos experience, when I had my own experience like King Lamonoi's father. I wanted everyone to feel that same joy. And I thought, there are people who are sad. That's unacceptable. They need to be happy. Like, how can we do this? How can we help them? You know? And so that was through our education. So my dad would say, look, you have all this time to learn and study, and let's do this as a family.
So awesome.
So that's one principle, focusing out, just thinking, what can our family do to focus out using our education, which I think is important.
I just want to point out something that I think that you have a pattern there also, right? That you've worked on yourself, you've been forgiven, right? Then you dedicating yourself to God, and now it's a natural process of wanting to share this, wanting other people to experience this joy, and I think you guys do a beautiful job of following that pattern.
We're trying.
Yeah,
we're right there with all of you guys. Yeah. We have our bad days too.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely, and you can see the fruits. That's what I often thought when I was young too. What are the fruits? And one thing with that is the conversion for my life came when I was engaged. It kind of a faith precedes the miracle. So when my parents said, we're going to go and do this service and we're going to pay the sacrifice, after I did that, that's when I experienced my own conversion process. And you kind of see that in the Book of Mormon too. A lot of times you have to put that foot forward and say, and out in faith, and say, okay, I'm going to obey. Maybe I don't understand. Maybe I don't really want to. My heart, but I love Brigham Young. He said, if my heart is not fully subject to this work, I will give my hands, my time, my talents until my heart bows. And it's not a miserable thing. It's and this is one thing I think too, when we submit to God, some people think, oh, God's going to make my life miserable. He's going to take away everything I love and it's going to be awful. Well, let me use a story from my dad's life. So when I was 10, then my dad had done software and he'd been a high school teacher and done some different construction work, but the Lord told him to do video. My dad thought, what? I've never touched a video camera. What in the world is going on here? Well, he took that step forward. He didn't even know if he could do it. He didn't even know if he really had that talent.
Yeah.
Within about a couple years, and now it's increasingly more and more, video is my dad's #1 talent.
Wow.
And it's also his #1 passion. If he could do anything in the world, he would want to do video. It just comes naturally to be able to be a filmmaker, a producer, see things in 3D, do that. And he had no idea until he was in his 30s. Right? Wow. Like, he had no idea. And if he hadn't taken that step forward, the Lord's like, do video. And my dad might have thought, well, I like to write, or I like to do teaching in person. I'll do that instead. He would have missed out on realizing this whole side of his personality that he didn't realize he had from the premortal life. And the Lord's like, just trust me, you are going to love this. You're going to love this. So that's the other thing, is helping your children realize God wants to help bring out their gifts and their talents. And every individual in a family has different talents and gifts that I believe were put there specifically for that family mission. So like I said, I'm the oldest of 10. We're all so different. People might think, oh, well, you have a family mission, and that works because all of you guys are somehow just all the same and kind of fit in line. No, no, we're all very different. We've got some of us that are the outdoors type that hate reading, some of us that are the reading types, some that are the artistes, some that are more the writers, some more emotional, some more the tough, just all different kinds of varieties. But what I've seen is that when all of us said, okay, we're going to put in our effort to work together on a project, we find out that every person has gifts and talents that are absolutely essential. So that kind of fits into the next principle, which is mission-centered, mission or ministry-centered. And I think a lot of it's kind of become a tagline in recent times in homeschool circles. What is your child's mission? Help them discover their mission. But I believe that not only does every individual have a mission, but I believe every family has a mission. And if you think about this, and this really first hit my mind when I was reading a quote from Elder Brewster McConkie. I believe this is in his Messiah series.
Okay.
But he said, God deals with and through families. He said, righteous families, faithful families, families who will believe and obey.
Awesome.
And I remember pondering on that quote when I was, I think, 16 or 17, and thinking, the entire Book of Mormon is the story of families working together. You have Lehi has a mission. He's supposed to, a big mission that most of us probably feel that we have, leave Jerusalem and set up a whole new civilization. That's a big mission.
It is.
He couldn't do it on his own. It was a mission that his sons joined in with him, his wife joined in with him, and it was even multi-generational.
Yeah.
The restoration of the gospel. A lot of times we think of just Joseph Smith, but we don't realize, if you read the original sources, his parents were hugely, they played an important role.
Yeah.
His aunts and uncles, so I go through Joseph Smith's cousin, they were central. They helped settle Parowan, Utah, and were right there in Kirtland and Nauvoo. You had his uncle, John Smith, was one of the patriarchs of the church. It was the Smith family. If we want to say who brought about the restoration, it was the Smith family.
Yeah.
And even other people, because it was, Joseph Smith said that Heber C. Kimball, Brigham Young, and the others, that they were actually all related through a common ancestor. And people have speculated if that's John Lathrop or Lathrop or others. But it's the same concept. It was family, even extended family, coming together and saying, okay, we got this thing called an apostasy. How are we going to turn this around? Figure easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
And his family did it, and they achieved a mission. They couldn't have done it just one person.
Yeah,
Joseph Smith couldn't have done it on his own. And so I think that's God works through families. And if you can get your family, sometimes easier said than done, because sometimes I have a lot of friends that come from disjointed families. I understand. 100%. Just start where you're at. This is a principle. Sometimes I have girls that come to me and they're like, I would love to do this, but my parents are not on board. I want to homeschool. They're not on board. They're not married yet, but they're saying, I want to live all of this beautiful vision, and I can't. And you say, God understands. Just understand what's the ultimate ideal, and then just say, how can your family do that? These are just principles. The application is going to look different for your family. What can your family do? Awesome. Which I think can relieve a lot of pressure and stress.
Yeah.
And instill that faith and say, go to God and God will show you how.
Reminds me of Uchtdorf's quote, lift where you stand. Just do whatever you can where you're at. Yeah.
And just start where you're at. You don't have to aspire to being some CEO or thinking, if I could be there, I'd change the world. Yeah. God works through humble people. It's the weak and the simple things. Yeah. And if you feel weak and simple, good. You're called. As the Lord says, He's calling, saying, come into the field. Come into the field is white. It's ready to harvest. Yeah. And so I'll just give a few examples of projects that our family did, and then that can maybe help jumpstart some people's ideas. Awesome. So we've done documentary films as a family, which meant we had to study how do we do film editing and the videoing, and decided to do documentaries. That's easier than motion pictures. Motion pictures would be awesome. If there's a family that wants to take that on, let me know. I'd love to see that.
I've got some sons that would love to.
Nice. Yeah. Maybe we need multiple families joining together. But we did documentaries, and we just try to see, what was an issue the Lord wanted us to start there. We worked for a private school as a job, developing all of their online software for their curriculum. And we had studied software already as a family, but then we were able to use that to help others get them jump started. Nice. And then we have another project we're working on. It's about an 12-acre farm down in San Pete, and it will be called Highland Cathedral Estate. And its entire focus is a place where families can come, disconnect from their cell phones, and be able to see preparedness in action that our family is using so that we can learn to be prepared. But instead of thinking, our family needs to be prepared, we'll just do this for ourselves, thinking, okay, how can we become prepared and at the same time help other people?
Yeah, that outward way.
Getting
all the principles in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we've thought about a place where, and we're still working on developing it, but we just finished planting over 1,600 plants and trees this last spring. And so that was fun as a family, and we had a couple other families come down and help to meet the deadline. But a place where families can come and see things that are growing in our climate, that are healthy, that are easy to grow, that are perennials, so they'll just come back every year, so you don't have to kill yourself planting annuals. Things that will be efficient, substitute. And we've learned so much. You can sunchokes, or ground nuts as alternatives to potatoes. And they're perennial, and they just come back every year, and they spread like crazy, and they work in our climate. And they're wonderful, and different kinds of onions and strawberries and different things that will work for different health issues, because a lot of people in our family, myself included, especially my dad, struggled with autoimmune diseases, different kinds of health challenges. And so we've been thinking too, how can we use diet to heal ourselves? Yeah. And then how are we going to go use this to help other people?
Awesome.
So, which adds a lot more meaning so that when you're down there sweating, you have a reason.
We're helping other people.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure that gives you energy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so that's one project. We also have a project called My LDS Scriptures. And what we want it to be, this is one that's in process as well right now, is an LDS scripture reading app that will have, we're organizing all of the teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith by topic. And we're actually very close to releasing phase 1. But what will happen is you'll be able to access all of Joseph Smith's teachings by topic. You'll be able to go see where to find the original source in the Joseph Smith papers so you can see the actual document.
Very nice.
And then we're taking the scriptures and we're going to meld them with the scriptures. So you can read Joseph Smith's commentary on the scriptures while you're sitting there.
This is going to be exciting.
It will have the Joseph Smith translation. It will have Hebrew and Greek definitions, so you can see what's the original Hebrew in the Old Testament without having to learn Hebrew. It will have Webster's 1828 dictionary plugged in. It will have different video resources and charts and graphs so that the scriptures can come alive. Completely free.
Yeah. So what's on your first phase then?
The first phase will have the teachings of Joseph Smith, and then the Joseph Smith translation. And then we've got other plans and even more than that. And so that is involving right now our family, helping. We have some volunteers on this one. A lot of the projects we did originally, all of our documentaries, we do pretty much ourselves, but this one we have a lot of families volunteering. And so working with them, which is a great social opportunity, being able to network with the best people on a project like this. Think, okay, how are we going to get this for mobile so that people can use it on their phones, which means we're going to have to learn how to do all those things and keep the website up to date and do the research and think about how much are we learning. So this is what we do for our scriptures. Rather than just sit down and read my scriptures for 30 minutes a day, actually use your scriptures in a way you can help people. So it's a lot of fun, and that adds excitement. So when you wake up in the morning, you're like, I am excited. Today's going to be a great day. Awesome. Also, we've been working on some books. Joseph Smith Foundation runs about 10 to 11 different websites on varying topics, everything from faith crisis, answering the letter to a CES director, to education material, to media. Family diet, cleaning out toxins. That's something else we've been learning out lately, and thinking, how can we get this out to more people? Just always thinking, what are needs and how can our family meet those needs while we're doing our day-to-day life? And you know, I like the scripture where the Lord in the New Testament, where he says, if you save your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you'll find it. And sometimes I feel like that can work as a family too. If your family loses their life, their dreams, for the Lord's sake, they're going to find that their family will become united closer. Some of my siblings and I, we'd fight when we were little, but it was through working on these projects and serving together and working together and sweating together that we came bonded together. And a stronger bond than just teamwork, but a bond of knowing we're fellow co-laborers. We're working for God, seeing each other's strengths, helping each other through our weaknesses. If you want family unity, this is the way to achieve family unity. And it works better than any program out there. The gospel of Jesus Christ works. And I can remember it also helps your kids come alive because I can remember 15 years old. That was the best. I remember thinking, this is the best year of my life. I've had... at that point. And what was different was because that's when I caught on and I caught the fire. And I was being able to work on the projects and being able to do things, and I knew it was helping people, and I was like, this is amazing. I have purpose to my life, So just some keys, as a family, you're thinking, okay, what do we do? What kind of projects? One simple idea that I've enjoyed, sometimes the Lord will just speak to you and say, this is what I need you to do. Sometimes I know some families that have taken a list and listed out, here's all the needs that the world has today, and just do it as a family. Do it for your family meeting. Guys, where have you seen suffering in the world? Well, I've seen, some teenagers are rebelling from their parents. Okay, that's a need. I see moms getting discouraged. That's a need. I see people that are suffering from cancer. That's a need. Just write down every need you see and then think, okay, pray to God and say, which need is our family supposed to take on? And then how do we do that? Awesome. And do that as a family. Have your kids help. Because then they're thinking, whoa, I never thought about this. Let's do something, And so a couple principles is every project should help people grow to become more like God. So the project, whatever you're doing, which is a pretty easy fallout when you're serving other people, you're going to be growing, but always thinking, how can we become more like God? How can we do this project the way God would do it? Involve all the members of the family, if possible. The 2-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, you know, our little 7-year-old Ezra Brigham. He loves just pulling a bit long, and sometimes he doesn't pull quite as many weeds as the rest of us, but he's right there with the rest of us working, and he's got, you know, he's helping, following around, checking the beehives and outside. And then when we're inside, you know, just say, hey, just join with us, you know, just kind of watch what we're doing. Look, Ezra, this is what I'm doing on the computer, and this is how I'm doing video. Just help them feel a part of it. And then helping them see, when you do your chores, you're helping free up time, so now we can go work on these projects, or this is the project, or, you know, so just involving everyone so that no one feels like, oh, I'm useless until I turn 18, or I can't do anything till I'm 16 and can finally drive, or, you know, finding our worth and serving others. And then it should develop talents and abilities. So if some people worry about, like, well, what about us? Are we ever going to develop? Oh, yeah. The Lord will push you. The Lord is going to help you develop. You will develop talents and abilities. Thinking about how to effectively use your time and talents in the most efficient manner. Thinking we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to build Zion. We're late.
We're late.
The world needs it now more than ever. Let's think efficiently. Motivate family members buy-in with scriptural principles. That's so much better than trying to motivate with food or fun or fantasy. Motivate with scriptural principles.
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
And then you'll tell
it is a hard thing, but I think once you learn it, then it would be something that was simple and very, very motivating.
Yes, definitely. It will work in the long term. No one said behaviorism doesn't work, right? But I love President Packer's quote where he says it's true doctrine understood that changes attitudes and behavior faster and better than the study of behavior changes behavior. And so recognizing, you know, behaviorism works, all that psychology, it works, but in the long term, if you really want good fruits, it's the gospel of Jesus Christ that really will heal your family. And I know so many families that have done projects and they were facing a challenge. They were maybe facing a family member who was struggling. Maybe they as a family were struggling in family harmony. And by working on the projects, that family issue got resolved, and you would never have guessed that it would, but the Lord, he made it work out.
That's great.
And then, of course, the ultimate is inspired and directed by the Lord. Because you can go take on a project. That's great, but there's a lot of people out there that are active and they're doing things, but it's another matter if the Lord is the one directing that. If it's the Lord saying, go build the boat. The Lord's the one saying, leave Jerusalem. And this is another Book of Mormon story that some people, I remember the first time this hit me and I was like, why have I never seen this before? So the famous story where Alma goes to preach to the Zoramites. This famous story of the Rameumptom, right? Who were Alma's mission companions? He took his sons. He took his sons with him. They were his mission companions. And you think about that. Here's a father saying, recognizing a need, saying, okay, we've got a whole bunch of people that are apostatizing from the church. And instead of being like, okay, sons, like, you guys stay here. I'll give you your homeschool assignments. Like, do these math lessons while I'm gone. Keep yourselves busy and try to stay out of trouble. He said, boys, let's go bring him back. Let's go, you know. And it was a challenge. Corey Anton, right, one of his sons, he messed up. And Alma talks about that. He says, you set a really bad example. Here I was, here your brothers were trying to do God's work, and here you were, your example was tearing it down. Let's work back together. And in the end, you see a family that was able to come back. Corey Anton came back, and it talks about how much good he did in Shiblon and Helaman. And when you look at the Book of Mormon, it's really a multi-generational story. Recognize how many times they say, I am a descendant of Nephi. They were proud of that because it was a family that had for generations been serving God as a family. The Book of Mormon is a family story. And so I found a lot of hope for that, even just for our own lives. And sometimes when parents have asked me questions, like, what should I do in this situation? And I think to the Book of Mormon, I'm like, okay, your answer is here. It's in the Book of Mormon. But so those projects, and how do you know what the project is? Ask God. Ask God, he will answer.
Yeah, I love your last quote things. I was, in Nephi when he has to build a ship. Well, I was just recently studying geometry and learned that Thales, the Greek mathematician, was at the same time in Egypt learning how to do geometry at the same time that Nephi was building the ship.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, okay, he's just starting geometry, but here Nephi's building the ship with all this geometry, right? And Thales is just barely starting to get the understanding and getting the principles and beginning to see the systems. And I thought, this is so beautiful that when you're doing it with God leading the way, then he's going to be much bigger, right? It's going to be bigger. You're going to go the promised land. Yeah. And you can do it yourself and just figure out a couple systems.
Definitely worked for Nephi. He definitely gained those skills. He was ready for real life.
Yeah, he was.
I love that insight.
Yeah.
It's a very good insight. I know that Josephus, in his book, he talks about how Abraham was taught astronomy by God and principles of geometry, and he's the one that took it to Egypt to help them build these pyramids and everything. And I remember we were watching a documentary on the pyramids, and my parents paused it, and they were like, let's talk about this. So then we had to go pull open the Pearl of Great Price. So you can see history, it's not putting history with the gospel. History is the gospel. Yeah. We just need to get the full picture and stop seeing just the little pinhole version. Yeah. Well, or just the tiny little stories, right? Right. We only see the story, but when we see it in light with, whoa, look what's going on the other side of the world at the same time. Yes. Yeah, it's so amazing. So as part of the Joseph Smith education, and this is available on our website, we put together something called the battle lines. So there's one thing of serving, but then we came through, okay, everything in this life it's a war, from the war in heaven, right? Between God and the devil. Yes. And it's not all sunshine and flowers. There's a struggle against light and darkness, and there's sides. And Satan's not original. He doesn't. All he does is he just copies what God does and twists it, right? He creates the counterfeit version. So we put together a list of different battle lines. Everything from the patriarchal family versus feminism, teenage rebellion, creationism, and being children of God versus Darwinism and its descent of man. So you can see the picture. Okay, what's the Lord's version? What's the devil's version? Stewardship and consecration versus Marxist socialism. Our children should know every one of these battle lines, and if they're not doing something, at least know, okay, what's right and what's wrong on this battle line, and then know which one am I supposed to tackle. Music and graceful dance versus rock and lustful dance. Parental rights versus the village and children being lords of the state. These are all getting now into the neat, the gritty details. Yeah. And I think that can help children who are apathetic, is if they see there is a battle going on and they need to take a part. If the world is all sunshine and flowers and there's nothing to do, then why work hard? Who cares? But if they can see, wow, there's a war going on, and I'm going to choose to be on the Lord's side. Who's on the Lord's side who, right? And I'm joining on the Lord's side. I'm going to put my shoulder to the wheel, and we're going to do this. We're going to bring about Zion. So that's a resource that's on our family website. I forget how many, but there's quite a few of these battle lines with resources for each one so families can get jump-started. There's books, videos, so that you can start studying it.
Now, is there a cost to your website?
No. Absolutely, 100%
It's absolutely free.
100% free. So the documentaries we do sell just because it costs money to replicate them and get the shrink wrap and all that. Yeah. But everything else, 100% free. Wow. So we just want people to be able to use it and find it. Wow,
that's so generous of you. Yeah.
There's one book that I would encourage every family to listen to. Every family I've had listen to this is just, it absolutely changed their life. It's called The Heavenly Man. And it's written by a man named Brother Yun. He was a Christian in China who escaped and came to America. But he's about my dad's age. So he's about in his, mid-40s, early 50s. Okay. And he's alive right now, but he grew up after Mao had completely exterminated Christianity from China. Completely wiped it out. Yeah. No one even knew about how to Bible. No one whispered the name of Jesus Christ. And the story, and so it's his story. His family was very impoverished. They were in a small village in China. And when he was young, his dad was dying of cancer. And they were so hungry that he and his siblings would go begging on the streets for food. Yeah. this brother Yoon, one day, his mother heard a voice that said, Jesus Christ can heal your husband.
Oh.
And so she was like, she gathers everyone around. She's like, okay, we got to pray to Jesus Christ because he can heal your dad. Long story short, his father was healed. And so that inspired this Yoon. He's in his early teens. He's like, I want some of the writings of Jesus Christ. And he goes on the search. He eventually found a Bible. It's a true story. And he was one of the top leaders that brought Christianity back to China.
Wow.
And persecuted. You'd think it was a very depressing book. He was in prison 3 different times, but it is the most inspirational book because you see someone who is completely consecrated to God's work. And we've had a lot of families, all of the kids in our family have listened to it because it helps give you a vision. You know, see those exemplars, have an example to look at and see there people are suffering in the world, and what do you do about it?
Yeah.
Just give you a vision of what's going on. So that, and then watching the Mother Teresa videos, those are 2 things that I think can really help families just start to expand their horizons and get excited.
Oh, goodness. I'm so glad you gave us a starting point to start on, because sometimes we slick, whoa, how do we do all that, right?
Yeah, we're giving you a fire hose right now. You're like, holy cow, what am I going to do?
Yeah. I remember when we taught morning devotionals, this is what we do for our morning devotional. And I was like, maybe we should just start where we started was just this, you know? And it grows with you. It grows, it expands.
Yeah. That's what I would say. Just relax, just enjoy the ride, and just start feeling out, and just, you know, and the Lord wants to help you.
Yeah.
The Lord definitely wants you to serve him. So he'll help you along. One example, I'll just give one example from church history, just showing this in kind of practical implementation. Okay. So Brigham Young, when he originally founded Brigham Young Academy, he gave a special endowment to the school. Brigham Young Academy became Brigham Young University. And he gave a special endowment, and he essentially said, was in a letter to one of his sons, and we have the quote on our website. He said that he was founding the Brigham Young Academy to fight the theories of Darwin, Huxley, who was one of Darwin's, he's known as Darwin's bulldog, Mill, and the false political theories. In other words, communism, socialism, and Darwinism. In other words, the background was that Brigham Young was looking in the world, and he was seeing Darwinism take the science world by storm. He was seeing communism and socialism taking freedom down. And he said, we need a school that will be fight this battle line, these battle lines. And so he said, I'm going to found a school to do that. And the purpose of the school, and this school will be able to fight Darwinism and teach the truth. It will be able to fight communism. It will defend the Constitution. Awesome. So you can see Brigham Young had the same vision of saying, okay, let's get these teens together and put them together and put them to work. They have lots of energy. I think that's one of the things is we've got to remember kids have lots of energy. They don't have a lot of the world experience, but they have lots of energy and they want to do things. And then the older generation, they have a lot of world experience, but maybe they don't have all that energy those kids do, right? They're getting a little beaten down. They've been living, and they're like, oh, put the 2 together. And you have a powerhouse of action. Parents, work with your kids. Work together as a team. Use each other's strengths. Help each other cover up each other's weaknesses. and you can do a lot of good. You will be able to make a difference. Also remembering, don't waste a second. I like that. This is one quote I'm just going to quote from Brigham Young. He said, if I spend 1 minute that is not in some way devoted to building up the kingdom of God and promoting righteousness, I regret that minute and wish it had been otherwise spent. He said, when I have this feeling, it proves to me that the Spirit of the Lord is with me. So if we can put that into our families, whereas families, we feel like every minute counts. Every minute has got to be focused on building the kingdom of God. And if we're cooking dinner, it's building the kingdom of God. If we're cleaning the kitchen, let's do it in a way that's building the kingdom of God. every minute.
I love that idea.
And then it's exciting and it gives purpose. And I think that's one other principle that we won't go into, don't have time today, but building on the rock. And that was something that in our home growing up, my dad was very emphatic that every standard was going to come from the scriptures. was going to come from the Lord or inspired teachings from presidents of the church. And one was music, for example. So a lot of people don't know that President Benson and other general authorities, they said no rock music, no offbeat, no backbeat, stay away from it, just cut it out of your home. So that's what my dad said. Okay, that's what we're going to do in our home. And so that would lead us so that if we were ever thinking, oh, why are mom and dad doing this? Why can't we do what everyone else is doing? Why are we? They would remind us, this is not us. This is God. We're in submission to God just like you guys are. Yeah. We're just trying to be obedient to him. And that would help us gain a testimony of then going to God and saying, God, do you really have this law? Do you really want this? And then, yes, God will answer. He'll give you those testimonies, right? And he will be able to help you so that every minute counts and you're built on that rock. And that, and then your children know this isn't mom and dad running things. Oh, my mom and dad, they know this is God. I love that when Laman and Lemuel are complaining about going back to get the plates, right? And Lehi says, this isn't me asking. This is the Lord that's asked them to do this. Yeah. And Nephi knew. Nephi knew because he had gone and got that witness. And he knew this is the Lord behind this. Yeah. So build your home on the rock. Be mission-centered and focus out and not just in. It's very important. Great. Yay. Gosh, you guys have done so much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. And I am going to go spend some more time at the Joseph Smith Foundation. Thanks. If anyone has any questions, they can come to the website and there's a contact email. Go straight to my email. It is a family business. And if anyone has any questions, they want any of these resources that I've mentioned or any more kind of documented, written down information, I have most of that and I can direct them to it. Okay. So wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Appreciate it. Thanks.